The villagers called him Richard. He was the richest man in the entire village. His mansion sat on the hill, overlooking every house, and his luxury cars were enough to remind everyone who was in charge. For years, nobody dared challenge him. Whenever Richard wanted something, he got it. But everything changed when a mysterious woman arrived in the village. Her name was Sara. Nobody knew much about her. She rented a small cottage near the river and kept to herself. Some villagers thought she was a tourist. Others believed she was hiding from her past. Nobody knew that Sara had once been a soldier. One afternoon, Richard spotted her walking through the market. The moment he saw her, he smiled. Another woman who would be impressed by my wealth, he thought. Richard walked confidently towards her. Beautiful lady, he said, I can give you a life most people only dream about. Sara didn't even look at him. She simply kept walking. Richard froze. No one had ever ignored him before. He stepped in front of her. It seems you don't know who I am. Still no response. I am Richard. Everyone in this village knows me. Sara looked at him for a brief moment. Then she turned and continued walking. The villagers watching nearby could hardly believe what they had just seen. For the first time in years, someone had refused Richard. His face turned red with anger. As Sara disappeared down the road, Richard clenched his fists. Then he looked at his bodyguards and smiled. A dangerous smile. Follow her, he whispered. Tonight, he would learn who Richard really is to be. Hidden Truths, Episode 2. As the sun began to set, Richard sat in his mansion, staring out of the window. Nobody had ever embarrassed him the way Sara did. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. Who does she think she is? He muttered. Meanwhile, Sara had returned to her small cottage. She sat quietly on the couch, enjoying the peaceful evening. What nobody knew was that Sara wasn't worried. In fact, she seemed unusually calm. Back at the mansion, Richard called his most trusted bodyguard. I want to know everything about that woman, he ordered. Where she came from, why she is here, and who she really is. The bodyguards immediately began asking questions around the village. But every answer led to another mystery. Nobody knew much about Sara. Nobody knew where she had come from. Nobody even knew her last name. Hours later, one of the bodyguards returned. We found something. Richard quickly stood up. What is it? There are rumors she has military training. The room suddenly became silent. Richard laughed. Military training? One woman against all of us. The bodyguards laughed with him. But deep down, something didn't feel right. That same night, Sara noticed strange movement outside. Someone was watching her. Someone was following her. Sara quietly stood up and looked through the window. Several shadows moved among the trees. A small smile appeared on her face. It was the smile of someone who wasn't afraid. The smile of someone who have seen much worse. Then she whispered something to herself. Richard, you have no idea who you are dealing with. Hidden Truths, Episode 3. The following evening, Richard could no longer control his curiosity. The more he learned about Sara, the more mysterious she became. Enough of the rumors, he said. I want answers. He turned to his bodyguards. Bring her to me. The men nodded and left immediately. Meanwhile, Sara was sitting outside her small cottage. The evening breeze was calm. The sound of flowing water filled the air. Then Sara noticed something. Footsteps. Several pairs of footsteps approaching from different directions. She slowly stood up. Moments later, Richard's bodyguards emerged from the shadows. There she is. One of them stepped forward. Mr. Richard wants to see you. Sara remained silent. The bodyguard smiled. That wasn't a request. The other men moved closer, but Sara didn't look frightened. One of the bodyguards grabbed her arm. That was his mistake. Within seconds, Sara twisted free and crashed him to the ground. The others rushed forward. What happened next happened so fast that nobody could believe it. Years of military training took over. Sara moved with speed and perception. One bodyguard fell, then another. The fight was over almost as quickly as it began. The remaining men backed away in shock. Nobody had ever defeated Richard's bodyguards. Nobody. One injured immediately called Richard. Boss. Richard frowned. The guard hesitated. Then he said the words Richard never expected to hear. We couldn't stop her. For the first time in years, Richard felt something unfamiliar. Fear. Who exactly was Sara? And what else was she hiding? Hidden Truth, Episode 4. The final episode. Richard couldn't stop thinking about the woman who defeated his men. This time, he decided to meet Sara alone. At sunrise, he arrived at the river where she always sat. I owe you an apology, Richard said. Sara looked at him silently. I heard you were once a soldier, he continued. Sara smiled faintly. I was, but that's not who I am anymore. Richard placed a confidential file on the table. I found your records. You saved hundreds of innocent lives during your secret mission. The government erased your identity to save you. Sara slowly opened the file. Every page reminded her of the past that she had been trying to forget. Richard lowered his head. I came here because I wanted peace. Richard nodded. Then you have my word. No one in this village would ever disturb you again. Days later, the villagers learned the truth. The rumors stopped. The fear disappeared. The woman they once whispered about had become the greatest village protector. As Sara stood beside the river, watching the sunrise, she quietly whispered, "My past made me strong, but peace is my greatest victory." The end.